Before we get on with the podcast, I'd like to mention that I now have 3 books for sale on Kindle. Recommended Reading for the True Conservative, Bad Democrat, and now Evil Liberal. All available for $3.99 or through Kindle Unlimited. Now, on with the podcast.
last week I was in rough shape, you know? Now, last week I told my wife I need a home improvement loan. She gave me $1,000 to move out. I'll tell you, my wife, there's always something, you know? Well, the other day I called her up. I said to her, honey, I've been thinking the last time we had sex. I'm getting excited. She said, who is this? I'll tell you, my wife, she never went for me. Well, the first time I called her up, she told me, come on over. There's nobody home. I went over. There was nobody home. My wife, she drives me nuts. Well, she was afraid of the dark. She saw me naked. Now she's afraid of the light. I'll tell you, that's all right. That's okay. I'll tell you, actually, I shouldn't tell jokes about my wife. I mean, she's attached to a machine that keeps her alive. The refrigerator. And I'll tell you, my wife, she can't cook either. My house, we pray after we eat. I bought a pressure cooker. Now I eat off the ceiling. What a lousy cook. I don't think meatloaf should glow in the dark. I mean, she can't cook at all. She made chocolate mousse and antler got stuck in my throat. I'll tell you my trouble. I got the wrong doctor. You know my doctor, Dr. Vinnie Boombas. You know my doctor? And I saw him last week. I told him, Doc, every day I wake up, I look in the mirror, I want to throw up. What's wrong with me? He said, I don't know, but your eyesight is perfect. Ah, you kidding?
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Science Wednesday, July the 8th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company and Professor Feynman. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
And good morning, everyone. I'm David Asman, in for Stuart Varney. Well, President Trump says the U.S. ceasefire with Iran is over. He made the announcement while speaking in Turkey during the NATO summit. This coming as the U.S. launches new strikes against Iran, describing them as a response to continuing sporadic attacks by Iran against ships trying to move through that Strait of Hormuz. President Trump, meanwhile, says he will probably hit Iran again tonight. Now, we're also tracking the market reaction, with markets initially selling off dramatically across all three major indices in pre-market activity, but they are off their earlier lows. And the price of oil is up, but it has come down a bit, remaining in the low to mid-70s. To politics now, Bernie Sanders is breaking his silence on his once favored candidate, Graham Plattner, now calling on the scandal-plagued progressive to, quote, step aside. And later on the program, Wikipedia has permanently banned one of its own founders from editing the site after he campaigned to make it, in his words, more balanced and fair. Larry Sanger joins us live to explain why he believes he was banned. It is Wednesday, July 8th, 2026. Varney and Company is about to begin.
And that was the Ass Man on Ass Man and Company. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And so, they're not evidence of your inadequacy. They are evidence of an imbalance that someone else has a vested interest in. Maintaining your empathy is one of the most beautiful things about you, but it is not a weapon someone else gets to use against you. The moment you recognize guilt for what it is, a manipulation tactic dressed in emotional clothing, you stop being its prisoner. And that recognition, as uncomfortable as it is what finally sets you free. You are never the villain. You are just someone who cared too much to see the trap. Boundary 3, the self-abandonment boundary. There's a version of you that existed before you learned to make yourself smaller, before you learned to edit sentences in your head and adjust your truth accordingly, before you became so practiced at reading the room that you forgot how to simply be in it. That version of you had opinions without apology, had feelings without immediate questioning whether those feelings were too much, had a sense of self that didn't shift depending on who was standing in front of you, and somewhere along the way, quietly and without a single dramatic moment, you drifted away from that person, not because someone forced you out, but because you kept choosing them over yourself, one small moment at a time, until the distance became so vast you could barely remember the way back. This is self-abandonment, and for conservatives, it is the most invisible wound of all, because it doesn't happen through one catastrophic event. It happens through 1,000 tiny surrenders. It happens every time you swallow what you actually think because you don't want to cause conflict. Every time you minimize your own pain to focus on someone else's. Every time you talk yourself out of your own instincts because someone else seems so certain. Every time you ask yourself, am I being too sensitive? After someone has treated you in a way that genuinely hurt. Those moments seem small in isolation, but accumulated over months and years, they create a life that fits everyone around you perfectly and fits you not at all. The psychological cost of chronic self-abandonment is staggering and deeply underestimated. When you consistently override your own needs, feelings, and instincts in favor of other people's comfort, you're not just losing energy, you're losing the thread of your own identity. You begin to experience a kind of internal static, a low-grade anxiety that hums beneath the surface of everything because some part of you knows that the life you are living is not fully yours. You may not be able to name it. You may just feel vaguely hollow, vaguely restless, vaguely like something important is missing, even when everything looks fine from the outside. That hollowness is not depression in the clinical sense. It is the feeling of a self that has been left behind too many times. What makes the self-abandonment boundary uniquely challenging for conservatives is that self-abandonment often feels good. It feels like devotion, like loyalty, like being a good partner or friend or child or parent. The narrative you tell yourself is noble. I put others first because I care. And while that impulse comes from a genuinely beautiful place, there is a critical line between generosity and erasure. Generosity gives from a place of fullness. Erasure gives from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear that your authentic self is simply too much for people to handle. And when fear is the engine behind your giving, it is not really giving at all. It is self-protection wearing the costume of selflessness. Setting the self-abandonment boundary begins with one of the most uncomfortable practices a conservative can undertake, learning to take your own inner experience seriously. Not necessarily more seriously than anyone else's, but just as seriously. It means when something hurts, you acknowledge that it hurts instead of immediately rationalizing why it shouldn't. It means when you have a need, you treat that need as legitimate data rather than an inconvenience to be suppressed. It means developing the radical habit of asking yourself before you respond to what everyone else needs, what do I actually need right now? Not what should I need, not what would be easier for everyone if I need it. What if I actually, honestly, genuinely need? This boundary also requires you to grieve something real. The relationships and dynamics that were built on the version of you that had no edges. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, bad Democrats will not know what to do with you. Some will push back. Some will accuse you of changing, of being different, of being selfish. And they'll be right that you are different. But different here does not mean worse. It means whole. It means present. It means finally showing up to your own life instead of perpetually showing up to everyone else's. The most profound thing you will ever do as a conservative is decide that you are also someone worth showing up for, that your inner world deserves the same tenderness that you have spent a lifetime extending outward. The coming home to yourself is not a betrayal of anyone else. It is the very thing that makes you sustainable, genuine, and free. You cannot give anyone a real version of you if you spent years hiding from yourself. The boundary is not a wall, it's a return, and you are long overdue for coming home. The fact that you feel so deeply is not your flaw, it's your gift. But gifts without protection get stolen. You have spent long enough pouring yourself into people that never poured back. These 3 boundaries are not about becoming someone cold or closed. They're about finally becoming someone whole. Guard your energy. Recognize manipulation. Stop abandoning yourself. The world needs your empathy, but it needs you intact first. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Dr. Berg.
How 115 million Americans got a chronic disease without ever getting sick. Today, I'm going to show you the single biggest cause of chronic disease in the U.S., and it's not what you think. It's not sugar. It's not seed oils. It's not even sitting in front of your computer for 8 hours. The single biggest driver of this epidemic happened in a meeting room. I want you to put on your detective hat for a minute. In fact, you want to ask these 2 questions anytime you actually have a health problem. Number 1, when did it start? And what happened just before it started? That's going to give you a really big clue, because there's been a lot of debates going back and forth of what causes chronic disease. Some people will say it'll be seed oil. Some people will say it's sugar. Some people say it's saturated fat. Some people say it's red meat. But if you study the graphs of chronic disease, you'll see these trends go up, and then all of a sudden it goes up significantly, like this massive spike right here, here, and here. Today we're going to really focus on 3 diseases: diabetes, cholesterol, and hypertension. So this is 1990, 1995, 2000, 2005, 2010. It's going along, slightly trending upward, right? And then around 2017, a total cliff, goes straight up in vertical. Overnight, 31 million people were now diagnosed with hypertension. Now, what's really wild about this is their blood pressure has not changed. The definition of what blood pressure is changed. All right, let's go to cholesterol. In 1988, which is probably over here, normal LDL was 190. And then in 2001, the committee dropped the 190 to 130. Statin prescriptions doubled in the next 3 years. Then in 2013, they dropped it again. Overnight, 12.9 million people were now diagnosed with high cholesterol. And by the way, as a side note, presently, we have 86 million people diagnosed with high cholesterol. And most of them are put on medication. Now, let's go to the diabetes graph right through here. This one's in red, and you'll see this massive spike right around 2010. And this one shocked me because they manufactured a brand new category of illness called prediabetes. In a single stroke of a pen, 72 million people became pre-diabetic. And then when you add it all up, roughly 115 million adults now sit in the diabetes or pre-diabetes bucket. Now, this is one thing that's very depressing, but the bigger thing that really got me was the conflict of interest. The people that formed the committees that decided this, a good percentage of them had financial ties to the industries that produce these drugs. Now, where did I get this information? From an amazing book, and I'll put the link down below. It's called Overdiagnosed, which was written by Dr. Welch, MD. And I recently learned there was a whole group of doctors who are trying to make other doctors aware of what's going on with this overdiagnosis. The British Medical Journal, BMJ, they actually ran a standing peer review campaign about this for years called Too Much Medicine. But in the book, Overdiagnosed, which I highly recommend you get, Dr. Welch talks about these three conditions and other conditions too, like osteoporosis, because they've done a similar thing with that. They also changed the definition of BMI, the body mass index, which is completely ridiculous because you can have people that are very muscular, but their BMI says they're obese. So that's for a separate video. If you're going to change the numbers to get a lot more people diagnosed and put on medication, the big question is, does this extend the person's life? Does it improve their health? It did not extend their mortality. In fact, it started a polypharmacy where you start one medication and you get a side effect, and then you're prescribed another medication, which gives you a side effect. I mean, even with high blood pressure, for years, normal blood pressure was 140 over 90. Then in November 2017, a panel of cardiologists voted to drop it to 130 over 80. Same people, same readings, brand new category. 31 million people became hypertensive overnight. Meanwhile, in the UK, Europe, Canada, Japan, Australia looked at the exact same scientific evidence and said, no, we're not going that direction. We're going to keep it at 140. I was under the assumption that normal blood pressure was 130 over 80. No, right now, that is stage 1 hypertension. So a lot of the spike of this epidemic has been manufactured. The elephant in the room is, what is actually causing diabetes? Insulin problems. We have chronic elevation of insulin. Chronic elevation of insulin causes stiff arteries. Chronic elevation of insulin also increases cholesterol. Chronic elevation of insulin causes insulin resistance and prediabetes and also diabetes. So then we narrow down the question, well, what causes a chronic elevation of insulin? A high-carb diet, especially refined sugars and refined starches. And so this leads to the million-dollar question. Are there natural alternatives for these diseases? Well, there just so happens to be some pretty hardcore research when we talk about type 2 diabetes and also the reversal of diabetes. That's right. There was full reversal after 12 months in 46 out of 100 people. This should be told to you while you're in the doctor's office before they give you medication, because they're supposed to give you alternatives to the medication according to informed consent. Then we get to LDL. Are there natural alternatives? Yes, There's red yeast rice that can actually help lower LDL. There's niacin that significantly lowers LDL and raises HDL. Plant sterols, can bring down LDL. Exercise can bring down LDL, and a low-carb diet can bring down LDL. The research methodology that we use is called randomized controlled trials. And with randomized controlled trials, usually you're going to be testing one thing compared to a placebo. But randomized controlled trials are not really set up to study lifestyle factors, especially when we're stacking multiple things at once. But if we had common sense, couldn't we add several of these things together? I'm talking about adding or stacking lifestyle factors. Change the diet, add exercise, sleep better, reduce stress. Couldn't we do multiple things? Take a look at the side-by-side comparison of garlic for hypertension. Hibiscus tea brings down high blood pressure. The DASH diet, with also the reduction of sodium, significantly reduces blood pressure. Exercise helps reduce blood pressure. Lowering sodium and increasing potassium reduces high blood pressure, and adding magnesium also reduces hypertension. So why not add up several of these items to potentially get to the root cause? Well, because there's no research on that. And until there's research, people don't look at it as valid, but it's impossible to do a randomized control trial on using all of these together because we don't really know what is causing what. So in summary, much of the chronic disease epidemic has been manufactured. Not all of it, but the spikes are manufactured. And since the theme of all three of these diseases wrap around this insulin resistance thing, I think it's really important for you to understand it, to know how to correct it.
And that was Dr. Berg. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little motivation.
What are you doing in the dark when nobody's watching?
Who am I really? The way that I'm spending my free time is an indication of who I really am. When no one's watching, when no one's holding me accountable, when there's nobody breathing down on my neck, who's the actual me? Do I work on myself or do I slack off? Do I focus on becoming better, or do I just mentally check out?
A real man in the dark, when nobody's watching, he putting in work. Because he loves the process. It's what I did in the dark that blew me up. You gotta embrace it. When nobody sees you, when nobody knows what you're doing, when you putting in those extra reps, when you watching those videos and you getting inspired, it's the process that makes you sweet.
And the way that you're spending that time is an indication of whether or not you're wasting it or you're creating something new out of it. And if you want to see things multiply in your life, it will always require you to maximize the things in your life.
I dare you to give 120%. I dare you to stop settling. I dare you to stop settling for average. I dare you to stop settling for good. And I want you to get to great, and then I want you to get to phenomenal. Some of y'all, you think that you can dominate when the lights come on. If you can't dominate in practice, you can't dominate when the lights come on. I get up every morning at 3 o'clock. I dominate at 3 o'clock in the morning. I dominate when everybody's asleep. I dominate at 4 in the morning, 6 in the morning. I dominate in the dark. I dominate when nobody sees me. So I dominate in the light because I dominate in the dark. You gotta discipline yourself, and you gotta learn that when you don't feel like it, you must still do it or actually go harder when you don't feel like it. Because out of 365 days, there are going to be days you don't feel like getting up. There are going to be days you don't want to work out. There's going to be days you don't want to watch film. There's going to be days that you don't want to practice. There might be days you don't even feel like getting in the game. But listen to me very closely. If you want to make it to the next level, you got to do what you said you were going to do when you don't feel like doing it, when you felt like doing it in the first place.
That's discipline. That's doing the stuff you don't like doing to get to where you want to go.
It doesn't matter how you feel. Your whole life you've been going on feelings, and that's why you messed up. You can't just have energy when you got energy. You got to wake up every day and you got to go get it.
Be deliberate and be intentional. Be descriptive and be specific. Declare
from a higher vantage point. You're 52. You're working harder than you've ever worked in your dadgum life. Why? Because I have built all these structures around me and eliminated most of the things that take my focus and discipline away so that I am wired, man, with a ton of energy to create and innovate and think and be present because I have self-discipline. It is a process. It is a habit. It is not something someone's born with. I didn't want to just do well in life. I wanted to dominate. Not just win it, but dominate. Dominate in your life. Dominate in business. Dominate in the financial part of your life. At the end of this life, now it's dominant. I'm talking about being great, becoming a GOAT. I need you to eat, sleep, breathe, dominate. We're not playing to the level of our competition no more. You're going to practice in the way they don't practice. Paying attention, being locked in and focused. Everything you do is going to be in a way that nobody else does. If you want to dominate in the area, you got to let everything go but that thing you're pursuing. When you're trying to accomplish a little short-term goal, when you're trying to get something real insignificant done, you can take some days off. But when you're trying to get that milestone done, when you're trying to get to the other side of that milestone, when you're trying to change your life, no plays off, no days off. Serena has made $84 million just in tennis. She wasn't great just because she said she was great. She wasn't great because they said she was great. She was great because she didn't take any plays off. Kobe, he was 120. He gave everything he had. He's not considered the great because he said he was great. He was considered great because he did not take plays off. You can't make your milestones become a reality if you're taking days off, if you're taking time outs. I'm saying to you that since you have to give an effort anyway, it might as well be 120. Why? Because when you do 120, you ain't never got to work again. You got to go all in. You got to dominate the day. You got to destroy distractions. I know you're tired. You're not the only one that gets tired. But if you're going to be able to make your dreams become a reality, you got to go past fatigue. You got to go past tired. You're not the only one with a setback. You're not the only one with a deficiency. Others have had them, but they didn't make excuses. They made adjustments. Others were tired. Others felt like giving up. Others felt like giving in. But they kept their milestone in front of them. They kept their eyes on the prize.
And that was a little motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, little meditation. And that was a little meditation at 741 hertz. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Professor Feynman.
You know, people ask me all the time, why, Chuck, Feynman, why can't we just go, pack up, point a rocket at Andromeda and go? And I love that question. I love it because it sounds so simple. And the moment you start pulling on that thread, the whole universe unravels in front of you in the most spectacular way. So let's talk about it. Why can't we leave our galaxy? Not the boring answer, the real answer. First, let me give you a sense of where we actually are, because most people have no idea, and that's not their fault. The numbers are so absurd that the human brain wasn't really built to handle them. We live on a planet. That planet goes around a star. That star, our sun, is one of somewhere between 200 and 400 billion stars in a structure we call the Milky Way galaxy. Now, 400 billion, say that number out loud. It doesn't mean anything to you, does it? It shouldn't. We didn't evolve to count to 400 billion. We evolved to count berries and keep track of enemies. So let me try to make it real. If you counted 1 star per second, 24 hours a day, no sleeping, no stopping, it would take you over 12,000 years to count every star in our galaxy. We haven't even had writing for that long. That's how many stars are just in our galaxy. And the galaxy isn't a little ball you could put in your pocket. It's a flat spinning disk with spiral arms reaching out, about 100,000 light years across. Now, a light year, people think that's a measure of time because it has the word year in it. It isn't. It's a measure of distance. It's how far light travels in 1 year, and light is fast. It's the fastest thing there is, about 300,000 kilometers per second. In 1 second, light travels the distance between New York and Los Angeles about 100 times. In 1 year, it travels roughly 9.46 trillion kilometers. So when I say the galaxy is 100,000 light years across, I mean it takes light itself, the fastest thing in existence, 100,000 years to cross from one side to the other. And we want to leave this thing. Now, where are we inside this galaxy? We're not in the center. We're not on the edge. We're kind of in the suburbs, about 26,000 light years from the galactic center, sitting on a minor arm called the Orion arm. We're not special real estate. We're a perfectly ordinary little neighborhood in a perfectly ordinary spiral galaxy. The nearest star to our sun, just the nearest one, is Proxima Centauri, about 424 light years away. Now, we've sent spacecraft out into space. Voyager 1 is the furthest human-made object ever launched. We launched it in 1977. It's been flying for nearly 50 years, and right now it's about 24 billion kilometers from Earth. Sounds impressive, right? It is impressive. It's a remarkable achievement of human engineering. But 24 billion kilometers is roughly 0.00026 light years. Proxima Centauri is 4.24 light years away. So at Voyager's speed, it would take about 73,000 years to reach the nearest star, not the edge of the galaxy, the nearest star. And the edge of the galaxy is 26,000 light years away from us. The far side is 74,000 light years. At Voyager speed, we're talking billions of years. The sun will have died by then. The Earth will be gone. So the first wall we hit is simply this. Space is extraordinarily, almost offensively big. But okay, you say, so we need to go faster. Fine, let's go faster. Let's build a better rocket. Let's say we build something much faster than Voyager. Let's say we build a ship that goes 10% of the speed of light. That's extraordinarily fast. Nothing we've ever built comes close to this. But let's imagine it. At 10% the speed of light, it would still take 40 years to reach Proxima Centauri. 40 years just to reach the nearest star. To reach the edge of the galaxy, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of years. The civilization that launched the ship would be ancient history by the time it arrived. What about 90% the speed of light? Now we're really cooking. At 90% of light speed, Proxima Centauri is about 4.7 years away. Still doable for a human crew, maybe. But the galactic edge, still tens of thousands of years away. You'd need thousands of generations living and dying on that ship. And here's where it gets interesting. Here's where physics starts doing something really strange and beautiful. Because the speed of light isn't just a speed. It's a cosmic speed limit. Nothing with mass can reach it. Not even get close to it without running into a fundamental wall that the universe has built into its very structure. Let me explain why you can't just keep accelerating In our everyday world, if you push something, it goes faster. You push it again, it goes faster still. You push it enough times and it goes as fast as you want. That's Newton. That's intuitive. That makes sense to us because we live at slow speeds. But Einstein showed us, and experiment after experiment has confirmed this, that as you approach the speed of light, something strange happens to mass. The faster you go, the more energy it takes to go just a little bit faster. The object gets heavier in a sense. It requires more and more energy for smaller and smaller gains in speed. And as you approach the speed of light, the energy required approaches infinity, not a large number, infinity. You would need infinite energy to push a massive object to the speed of light. And this isn't just theory sitting on a blackboard. We test this every day in particle accelerators. We take protons and electrons and we smash them with energy, enormous amounts of energy. And they get very close to the speed of light, but they never reach it. The closer they get, the more energy we have to pour in. It's not a technology problem. It's not that our accelerators aren't powerful enough, though they aren't. It's that the universe itself simply does not allow it. The law is absolute. So the speed of light is the wall. And the galaxy is 100,000 light years wide. Even traveling at the speed of light, in which is physically impossible for anything with mass, it would take 100,000 years to cross it. But wait, here's a twist that I find absolutely delightful, because nature loves to surprise you just when you think you've understood her. Einstein also showed us something called time dilation. When you travel very fast, very close to the speed of light, time slows down for you relative to someone who is standing still. This is not a metaphor. It is not a poetic way of saying something. It is a literal, measured, confirmed physical phenomenon. Clocks on airplanes tick slightly slower than clocks on the ground. We've measured this. GPS satellites have to account for relativistic time differences, or your map app wouldn't work. Time dilation is real. It's used in engineering. It's not science fiction. So here's what this means for our traveler. If you got in a ship and traveled at 99.9999% the speed of light, which requires absurd amounts of energy we don't have, time on your ship would slow down enormously relative to Earth. You might experience only a few years, while thousands of years pass back home. In principle, the crew of such a ship might personally experience a journey to the far side of the galaxy in what feels to them like a reasonable human lifetime. But here's the cruel part. When you arrive, if you arrive, you step off the ship and tens of thousands of years have passed on Earth. Everyone you knew is dead. Every civilization that existed when you left is dust. The language they spoke is gone. Human history has moved on without you. You're a ghost from the past arriving in an unrecognizable future. And even this is completely hypothetical because getting to 99.99999% the speed of light requires energy that is, as a practical matter, impossible to produce with any technology we can imagine. Now, there's something else. It's not just about the speed of light. Even if we somehow waive that rule, even in a universe where you could go faster than light, which as far as we know you cannot, there's another problem. The sheer scale of what you'd need to sustain life for the journey. Let's say the journey takes 1,000 years at near light speed from the perspective of the crew. You need food, water, air, energy, medicine, spare parts, social structure, governance, mental health. You need an entire self-sustaining civilization inside a tin can flying through the void. A single crop failure, a single mechanical failure in the life support, a single epidemic, and it's over. The journey ends not because of physics, but because life is fragile, and 1,000 years is a very long time for things to go wrong. And remember, space isn't empty. Well, it mostly is. But in the interstellar medium, there are particles, thin, sparse, but at near light speed, they hit your ship with enormous energy. At 99% the speed of light, the hydrogen atoms floating in interstellar space would hit the hull like cosmic radiation, destroying everything. You'd need shielding, enormous shielding, which adds mass, which requires more energy to accelerate. It's a cascade of problems, each one feeding the next. Some people say, what about wormholes? What about folding space? And I appreciate the enthusiasm, I do. General relativity actually permits the mathematical existence of wormholes. They're solutions to Einstein's field equations. On paper, you can write down a wormhole and the math doesn't immediately explode. But the kind of wormhole that would be traversable, big enough to fit a spacecraft, stable enough to use, would require something called exotic matter. Exotic matter is a material with negative energy density, not just low energy, negative energy. We don't know if this exists. We've never observed it. The Casimir effect gives us tiny hints that something like negative energy might be possible in quantum mechanics, but we're talking about effects at the scale of nanometers, not the kind of thing you'd use to hold a galactic tunnel open. And even if exotic matter exists, the amount you'd need for a traversable wormhole would be, by some estimates, on the order of the mass energy of a planet or a star. Where are you going to get that? How are you going to control it? These questions don't have answers. Not because we're stupid, but because we're dealing with physics at scales and energies that are simply beyond us, perhaps permanently beyond us. So wormholes are beautiful mathematics and hopeful speculation, and I love them for that, but they are not a solution we can put on a roadmap. What about generation ships? Ships where one generation is born, lives, and dies, and the next generation takes over, and on until eventually, after many generations, the ship arrives. I find this philosophically fascinating and practically horrifying. Think about what you're asking. You're asking people to be born into a mission they never chose, to live their entire lives inside a metal cylinder, never seeing a planet, never feeling rain, never knowing anything but the ship, and to die knowing that they themselves will never arrive, that their children might not arrive either, that they're just a link in a chain stretching hundreds of generations into the future. Can human psychology sustain that? Can social structures hold together over that time scale? Over 10,000 years of isolated living, societies diverge, languages change, beliefs change, the mission drifts, the original purpose gets reinterpreted, corrupted, forgotten. History shows us what happens when isolated communities evolve over centuries, and those communities had a whole planet to roam around on. And again, this is all for leaving the galaxy, not for reaching a nearby planet, not for visiting a neighboring star, for getting to the edge of our own galaxy, which is still just the beginning, because beyond the Milky Way, the nearest large galaxy, Andromeda, is about 2.5 million light years away. Here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. The Milky Way is about 100,000 light years across. The observable universe is about 93 billion light years in diameter. The Milky Way is roughly 1/1,000,000th of that diameter. We are an incomprehensibly small part of what exists, and leaving even this small part may be forever beyond our reach. The universe has constructed itself with a speed limit, and that speed limit, combined with the distances involved, creates what you might call a cosmic cage. Not out of cruelty. The universe isn't cruel. It isn't anything. It just is. And the way it is happens to make it extraordinarily difficult, perhaps impossible, for life to move freely across it. This is one of the reasons why, when people ask whether aliens have visited Earth, one of the most powerful counter-arguments isn't about whether aliens exist. It's about whether anyone can cross these distances. The same physics that stops us stops them. Unless there are solutions to these equations that we haven't discovered, the universe may be structured in a way that permanently isolates civilizations from one another. Now, I want to tell you something about how science thinks about hard problems, because I think it's important. When I was young, people thought flying to the moon was fantasy, not difficult. Fantasy. The idea that a human being would stand on the lunar surface within living memory was not taken seriously by most people alive in 1900. And then it happened. And it happened through an accumulation of understanding, of engineering, of human ingenuity applied systematically over decades. So am I saying we can never leave the galaxy? No, I'm too careful to say never. The universe has surprised us before, and it will surprise us again. There may be physics we don't know yet. There may be ways of interacting with space-time that general relativity hints at but doesn't fully reveal. The quantum gravity theories we're still working on, string theory, loop quantum gravity, others, may contain surprises that change the picture. What I am saying is that with the physics we know, which is very, very good physics, tested to enormous precision, leaving the galaxy faces obstacles that are not engineering problems. They are fundamental problems. The speed of light is not something we need to engineer around. It's something written into the structure of reality. And the distances involved are not just large. They are large in a way that interacts with that speed limit to create something very close to an absolute barrier. But you know what I find beautiful about this, and I genuinely mean beautiful, not in a consolation prize way, but genuinely, deeply beautiful. The fact that we understand this at all is extraordinary. We are collections of atoms, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, assembled by billions of years of evolution on a small rock orbiting an ordinary star. We have been walking upright for maybe 3 or 4 million years. We've had science, real science, for maybe 400 years. And in that time, we've figured out the speed of light, the structure of space-time, the size of the universe, the nature of black holes, the age of the cosmos, the structure of matter down to quarks and leptons. We have looked at the universe and understood it well enough to know why we can't cross it. That's not a failure. That's one of the most stunning achievements in the history of thought. We can look up at the night sky and point to a smudge of light, the Andromeda galaxies, and say that is 2.5 million light years away. It contains 1 trillion stars. It is approaching us at about 110 kilometers per second and will collide with our galaxy in about 4.5 billion years. And it is almost certainly unreachable by any means we can conceive. We know all of that. We know it by bending light through glass and measuring tiny shifts in wavelength and applying equations developed by a man who worked in a patent office. The audacity of that is staggering. So here is where I land on this question. We cannot leave our galaxy because the galaxy is 100,000 light years wide, and the speed of light, the absolute maximum speed in the universe, creates a timescale so vast that no human lifetime, no civilization, no ship we could build can conquer it. The energy requirements alone are beyond anything imaginable. The life support requirements are beyond anything we could sustain. And the physics beneath all of this isn't something we can engineer around. It's the operating system of reality. Could this change? Could there be physics beyond what we know that opens a door we can't currently see? Maybe. I'm a scientist. I hold my beliefs proportional to the evidence. And the evidence right now says the door is closed. Future evidence might say otherwise. I'd be delighted if it did. But even if we never leave, even if humanity spends its entire existence on this one small rock and in this one spiral arm of this one ordinary galaxy, that doesn't diminish us. It doesn't make us insignificant, because we looked at the universe and we understood it. We asked the question, we did the mathematics, we built the telescopes, we launched the probes, we pushed against every limit we encountered, and where we couldn't break through, we at least learned exactly what we were pushing against. That, to me, is what it means to be human. Not that we go everywhere, but that we desperately, relentlessly, joyfully want to understand why we can't. And understanding, even the understanding of our own limitations, that's the most remarkable thing there is.
And that was Professor Feynman. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.